Not the first person to think of these matters. It's just I've devoted my life to the furthering of the cause.
Talk intellectually about that in terms of mistakes that then blow up, and you talk about iatrogenic effects of interventions into the economy or into the social system. Because we've had this. We've had a bunch of blow-ups, and then typically what happens is that we need a bigger government. If government is partly to blame or partly responsible for something, then we need a bigger government response in order to fix it. And you talk about that.
Exactly.
How do we break that cycle?
Via negativa. Via negativa is if I want to cure diabetes and I give you any drug, all right, and people typically take drugs, then they have to take more drugs, and side effects multiply, and they spend their lives making pharma richer. So you have unintended multiple, chains, unintended consequences, branching out. All right. If you remove, say, sugar from the person or food, and make someone starve for 600 calories a day for 6 weeks, you can gain your weight back and you remove diabetes with the same probability as having good drugs.
Right.
All right. But there are no side effects. It's called via negativa from Orthodox theology. Via negativa is you can't figure out what God is, but I can safely say what He's not. All right. So the via negativa permeates this book as a robust decision making, stuff like that. So what we should remove. So removing is, to me, is like removing some sections of government is probably the best thing we could achieve. But since Reagan, I haven't seen it done.
But he's a problem, right? Because you were just saying, his rhetoric was, I'm getting rid of government, but in fact he was bailing out banks.
He bailed out. He nationalized the bank.
Yeah.
Nationalized the bank, Continental Illinois, and then later on these people blew up in the crash of '87 from bad risk management. Just to tell you, it was not a. He was, but Thatcher came removal. All right. Removal is something harmful. Doesn't have long-term side effects.
Right.
Okay, as a first step, and then you can see what we became addicted to addition, and academics like to add, and they like to complexify, and practitioners we like simple, and we like subtractive things. Okay, first I need to tell you what fragility is.
Okay.
Once you map fragility as what does not like volatility, then you can realize that the opposite would be something that likes volatility and likes variation, likes turmoil, likes stress up to a point. And the opposite would be robust. Robust is like a rock, it doesn't care. Diamond is robust, perfectly robust. What is antifragile gains from disorder, and effectively may even need disorder for fuel. So here you have three categories for objects. The fragile doesn't like volatility. The robust doesn't care. The resilient, the adaptable, really doesn't improve from stress. What people fail to understand, and this is where libertarians tend to pick it up rather quickly, is that even when you read Adam Smith, you have this illusion that the economy functions like a machine. It's not like a washing machine. A washing machine needs maintenance. It's more like a cat than a washing machine. So like the human body needs some stressors, and everything organic and complex communicates with the environment via stressors. It's exactly fractal in the sense that you have layers, just like the restaurant business, is composed of restaurants, you see, and for the restaurant business to be robust, at least robust, or perhaps anti-fragile, you need every single restaurant to be fragile.
Right.
You see, so it's the opposite of Nietzsche. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I make claims. What kills me makes others stronger.
That's right. Because they
learn from your mistakes.
That's right.
And you have evolutionary forces where the individual sacrifice for the collective, and it works within your biological system, even at the cellular level. You're composed of cells. If you harm some cells, you see, your overall health will improve.
Now this, talk a little bit more about that, because most people would say, okay, when you have a system and if there's a contagion in it, if there's a cancer in it, if there's some kind of stressor that starts taking over, it's going to spread to the whole system. And isn't this what we hear in the banking, in the financial crisis, that, there's a contagion and it spreads out. you're arguing that actually a robust or an anti-fragile system is capable of seeing this part of the system being cancered and learning from it.
Exactly. Cite the great Yogi Berra.
Sure.
A good anti-fragile system is a system in which all mistakes are good mistakes.
Right.
You see, and a bad system is one in which, as again to paraphrase Yogi Berra, you tend to make the wrong mistakes.
Right.
So let's compare the banking system to say transportation. All right. Every plane crash makes the next plane crash less likely, and our transportation safer. Now with the banking system, it's because of, you may blame it on government. I do blame it on government, but it could be something else.
Wait, did you say you do blame it on government?
I do sort of blame it on large government, means large banks too big to fail.
But I mean,
but the failure of a bank leads to an increased probability of a failure of the entire system, and that's a bad system.
How, just with the banking system, what's the best way to stop that so that you're not allowing the problem to replicate?
Okay, I have the way I present things is overall. I say what fragilizes an overall system. What does fragilize an overall system? The three things. Number one, centralization. Decentralization spreads mistakes, makes smaller mistakes, like Switzerland, perfectly decentralized, and smack in the middle of Europe. So decentralization, which is where we converge with libertarians. Right. A second one is low debt, because we've discovered since the Babylonians that debt has systemic consequences, whereas equity, doesn't have. And let me talk from risk-based system. Sure. All these economists, they're not, say, let's put it this way: the risk is not their thing. All right. So so the second idea is debt, and the third one I will say is skin in the game. So let's talk about debt. Debt leads to fragility, because let's say that you have two brothers, one of them borrowed. And they both have provisions about the future, forecasts, predictions about the future. His one brother borrows, the other issues equity. The one who borrows will go bust if he makes a mistake. The one who issued equity will fluctuate, but will be able to survive forecast error.
But is it also true that the brother with equity can never really have that big payday?
For him, but overall for the system, you see, this thing is well distributed. There's an accounting equality. So what you have is debt. Traditionally, debt has blown up systems, and has been very good for governments to wage war. That's typically. But and I'm not against credit. I'm against leverage. Credit, letter of credit is what made commerce possible. So what we have is
talk a little bit about that. So then, what's the difference between credit, where you give me a loan and I allow and I say I'm going to pay you back, and that gives me the ability to get something in the short run that will help me produce more in the long run. That's okay.
Letters of credit most of banking started mostly. I trust you. You're going to go to Aleppo, Syria, and I'm in Florence, and you're going to send me some silk, and you trust me, and then I give you some money and then silk, and then my correspondent in Aleppo would pay you the minute I get my silk. That kind of transaction. So that's called letter of credit. You see, where you have like debt conditional on some commercial transaction being completed. Okay, and it also allows people to finance some inventory. Provided the buyer is a committed buyer. That kind of facilitation of commerce is how it all started, the letter of credit, and developed very well. Before that, we had debt in society, and it led to blow-ups in Babylon, and then they had to have debt jubilees, and then of course the Hebrews also had debt jubilees, and of course say neither borrowers nor lenders shall be. Right. In the Septuagint, you see that and then you had the Romans didn't like that. The Greeks sort of didn't like that, except for a few intellectuals for some reason, like Mr. Krugman, liked that. And
by the way, that's really diminishing the currency of the term intellectual. But
okay. But and then of course later on that came back to Europe with the Reformation, and it was mostly to finance wars. The Industrial Revolution was not financed by debt. California You told me that you read my book on a Kindle or something like that. This was not financed by debt; it was financed by equity.
Right.
So debt is not necessary. I mean, you can use it for emergencies, and of course we have a lot of societies, Catholic societies. Aquinas was against that, and his statements were stronger than the Islamic fatwa against that.
Right.
So just to tell you that we have learned through history that these things, debt as leverage, form of leverage, can blow things up. So this is where debt fragilizes. Now what we have had, of course, in this economy is growth of debt, mostly financed by indirectly by governments, because you blow up, we're going to be behind you, and that was, that's what we're dealing with.
So this is the problem with too big to fail, which went from being a worry to being inscribed in official policy.
Exactly, it became sort of like the mode, and then but you cannot separate the three.
Right.
Large government, you cannot separate. It's inseparable. The third point is skin in the game.
Right.
When you're a banker, all right, and you have the upside, no downside, what are you going to do? Create the maximum number of loans that don't blow up often, and collect your bonuses. It's like selling out of the money option, and then of course you blow up. Now, how do I link this to fragility? It's very simple. Fragility is short volatility, you see, and selling an out of the money option is short a certain class of volatility. And what you have is a banker has the option, he has the upside, and you have if you pay taxes every April 15, you're paying for his downside. Okay, that's it. All right. They may make money, but you still cover his downside. So this to me is not capitalism. It's misunderstanding of basic rules. And skin in the game, started with Hammurabi. It led later on to eye for eye, and led to the golden rules. Right.
Well, now talk about how skin in the game plays out then in the current financial crisis.
We know. I mean, I work on Wall Street. I work everywhere. You have a lot of forms of asymmetries that are not visible to the public. Corporation, right? You own the corporation, and then you go public now, and then you sell it to some manager. Now, a professional manager, his aim is to look good so he can collect the bonus. He doesn't really care about the intrinsic health of the corporation. In banking, of course, bankers, we bail them out. Banking, I wrote on the Black Swan. I got so many letters. Asked me to prove it because people didn't believe it, and also bankers, of course, didn't like my book. In 1983, by 1983, for the last quarter of 1982, banks lost more money in money center banks that quarter than they made in the history of banking, of money center banking. And of course we bailed them out. So we started the mode under Reagan. Right. And of course later on Greenspan made economic policy to accommodate.
You referred to Greenspan as the Fragilista doctor.
Fragilista, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not just Greenspan that was the Fragilista. It was a system that bailed out banks, nationalized Continental Illinois, and then suddenly allowed this asymmetries to prevail.
Where is that coming from, though? Is that and this is where you talk about big government is necessary for that, but then the pressure is coming from the banking industry themselves.
Well, the whole combination, big government. Big central government was a big, bailing out authority, coupled with a huge number of regulators who don't have a clue, and who eventually are indirectly on a take, because, in Africa, you see people have outright corruption, where I give you diamonds or something, whereas in Washington, you have this implicit, corruption. I call it the Tony Blair problem. The Tony Blair problem is you do a good job, and then you're going to go be able to work for $5 million a year at Goldman Sachs. So whatever you're going to do as a regulator is going to be there to either facilitate your job at Goldman Sachs or make regulations complex enough to make yourself necessary later on. And we have evidence of that.
Going back to that idea of a kind of fractal system, Adam Smith said that, while each person is pursuing their own personal desires or their personal benefits, the whole system gets more robust. But you're saying actually that there are these actors in our system that are not the manager of a bank. So how did that happen? Okay. And is that a necessary, or is it an inevitable outgrowth of larger and larger economic systems?
Exactly. No, it's not necessary for economic system. If you let things fail, if you don't let things fail, you're going to have concentration of mistakes. Right. You see, that plus asymmetries doesn't work very well. Plus risk hiding, where you have regular. I mean, I spent 20 years fighting something called value at risk. That is was mandated by regulators and allows people to hide risk in the tail. It's not. So, to me, when you have skin in the game, it solves so many problems. Okay. People are harmed first by their own mistakes.
So with the banking system, how do we make sure that the banks? I mean, and this is a common thing that banks or mortgage underwriters were able to sell off whatever
There you go.
They had nothing to lose by making bad deals. So
exactly.
How do you keep their skin in the game, especially when things are going to be traded on secondary and tertiary?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go as far as that. Just have at the level of a bank itself, all right? So we don't bail out banks. Here we're bailing out individuals through these securitized mortgages. But just take a level of a bank. Bob Rubin made $120 million helping to stuff Citibank with risks. Right. And his boss made even more. And then they blew up, we're paying for it. And bankers even spat in our face by paying themselves 2010, higher level of bonuses than ever in history, all right? So how do we solve it? Very simple. I have rules. I don't believe in nationalization, but I believe as a taxpayer, I would have a list of banks, all right? Decentralization solves the problem, but if you don't have decentralization, have a list of institutions in this country, all right? Yeah. If they fail, would it be a national emergency to save them? Yes, no. If the answer is yes, you call them up, you tell them effectively, as of tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., you belong to the taxpayer. Right. The taxpayer should be able to set your bonuses. Okay? You see? That way you don't have this warped incentive.
Who is making that list? I mean, it would be
whoever. I mean, it would be the taxpayer, whoever represents it. You pay taxes, government, whatever, however you want to do, you want to call it. You have government for that, but saying we cannot bail out a company. All right. De facto, they're civil servants. You see, so we have to decide on their bonuses. Right. So what would it do? It would force corporation to be small enough that they wouldn't be on that list. Right. That's one form. Right. Another one to solve associated problems would be what I call the Tony Blair rule. The Tony Blair rule: you cannot go work for the government, and ever later on have an income, higher income than what you earn indexed for inflation, without paying it to the taxpayer. Why? Because I don't want the regulator to go make something, all right, to complexify his stuff to go make $5 million for Goldman Sachs. Go work for Goldman Sachs now. Are
these kind of thought experiments, or do you actually think that these are rules that could be implemented and enforced?
These are heuristics. I come up with simple heuristics, and you want to come up with heuristics that are not perfect, but very applicable and solve complex problems without having side effects. Right. Okay. And to me, it's very important, and to have these heuristics, and that would clean up Washington. If you have such a stringent rule, so you want to work for Goldman Sachs, go work tomorrow for Goldman Sachs. Don't go work, after a career. And so it should be that working for Washington should not be an investment strategy. Right. So that would automatically you control the government. On our.
Now you talk about decentralization, and one of the things that is kind of fascinating about the global economy over the past 50 years. I mean, you could argue over the past 1,000 years, is that in many ways it's becoming more and more decentralized. Certain types of knowledge are more decentralized than ever before. Economies, in many ways, compete in a way that they didn't before because investment. Countries can no longer force investors to keep their money in a particular currency, in a particular geographic location. So are we, even as we're facing a global crisis, are we in fact seeing, is this a good thing?
No, we have actually, this is leading to more centralization.
Okay, well talk a little bit about that then.
We used to have, there's something in nature called
globalization is generally a good thing, right?
It is if you know how to handle it, right? If you know how to handle it, if you let firms fail, okay? There's something called the island effect. And the island effect in nature is as follows. An island will have much higher number of species per square meter than a continent. And actually it's proportional to the square of the area. Right. Yeah, so it is shockingly robust, across continent. So we've lost the island effect. Now you have Google dominating the whole planet and stuff like that. It's not a problem. The thing is, if we stop letting these firms fail when they become ill, and they can get large enough to dominate government. So the problem is if you let them fail. Now, computer firms I'm not worried about.
Why aren't you worried about computer firms?
Because it's a competitive environment.
Right.
Google is a
so it's we can see the end of Google on the horizon.
We can see the end of Google.
We know
Microsoft
no
is different. No difference. No difference
Right.
for you and I. If Google fails tomorrow,
right.
or there'll be something else. Don't worry. It's not like it'll be dramatic, and the government won't save them.
Right.
Okay. So, and I don't think they'll fail because for that reason, given that they know the government won't save them. But if you have, so you can have some centralization concentration. That's not the problem. The problem is we have had in almost all Western countries. Nominally, they say decentralization, decentralizing, but effectively they've had more and more power to the government, central government, like the United States.
Okay.
So you want decisions to be spread out. Now, government debt is a result of centralization, and typically the cause of more centralization. It's a very bad circle.
Right.
You see, government debt now, most of the debt now is transferred to the government with a small number of people calling the shots, and some fellow, with a beard who sort of looks like me, but I hope not too much, is printing like there was no tomorrow. He has no clue. All right.
Why is that? Why is that not? Isn't that exactly what we need? Though we need a monetary stimulus. Because
we need. I don't understand this. No, I understand. Rather understand that the mistakes coming from that can be monstrous. The point is that you need to look at risks of things. You see, some planes may go faster, but you wouldn't want to be on them because they're going to crash.
Right.
You see, we've got to look at things with a risk adjustment standpoint, or the risk vision. There's another thing about skin in the game. Bureaucrats don't have skin in the game. They have a spreadsheet looking at them. At local government, people are much more responsible for deficits. But the real cause isn't the smallest beautiful argument. The real cause is what I explained here. Everything comes back to volatility. When you're large, you get to be short volatility. Why? A £100 million project in the UK tend to cost 30% more in overruns and problems than a £5 million project. So you have these errors scale faster and faster, and that is bad for system.
How do we get to a point, because clearly, at least in terms of political economy and the intersection of big government and big business, there's no way in hell we're going to let companies fail anymore, it seems. I mean, what are the steps that can be taken to not necessarily scale things back, but just to finally say, okay, you know what, we're letting you go? Because during the banking crisis here, people were like, look, if you let these, Hank Paulson, who is certainly one of your bête noirs, he said, look, it's Friday afternoon. If we don't do something this weekend, on Monday, money won't come out of the ATM machines. How do you argue back against
you're libertarian, are you?
Yes, I certainly
You are libertarian. What would you rather have, nationalization of the banks or moral hazard in the system?
I would rather have moral hazard. Minimize moral hazard.
Okay, the way you minimize moral hazard, you nationalize immediately and then work with it.
Okay.
So what we've done is,
which is something Sweden did.
Hank Paulson led. Okay, the one thing people don't know, we're talking about deficits all the time. All right.
Right.
$500 billion every year. We looked at the firms, foreign and U.S., that were helped by the Fed during the crisis of 2008.
Right.
We looked at the compensation to their employees, $500 billion. Now, if that's not government money, what is government money? And that's part of our deficit. You see, that potentially we're going to have to pay back. Banking is a very inefficient business.
Right.
So I think that we should have nationalized. We wouldn't have had the problems we've had later, and then you would be forced to reorganize.
Do you think it worked then in the context of GM? Where there was effectively a nationalization, where the president was dictating personnel decisions.
And nationalization is not something to save the company and bring it back to health. Nationalization is because the system doesn't work.
Right.
Okay, you nationalize and then you start from, you have, the government has control and we're no longer hijacked by the bankers. What has happened is the bankers took over the government. and with the Geithner.
And so this is Geithner, Paulson,
everything.
Rubin.
Rubin, you know, if you see the difference between Rubin and Paulson, you need a microscope in the end, all right? So it's that mafia of Wall Streeters who took over the government. I mean, look at what happened in 2010. How can we, as taxpayers, tolerate their paying themselves the largest bonus pool ever in 2010?
Well, let's to talk a little bit more about the fragility and anti-fragility argument. In an excerpt from Antifragility, or a part of it, you talked about how you used to go to, after you realized you didn't have to wear a jacket and tie everywhere, you went to conferences of kind of futurists and people in the high-tech industry, as well as kind of hip investment bankers. And at first you thought these people were liberated, but then you said that there was a problem with them, that they were kind of autistic and that they had an engineering mind.
Well, there's something, I mean, I'm effectively close things to an engineer, but there's something called neomania. Neomania is when you want to change things, when you think the future is in more technological items. And if you look at evidence, exact opposite. I mean, we're in a room here, we're sitting on chairs, Egyptian, but mostly reserved
and these
to
cameras go back to the ancient Babylonians, but...
No. What my point is that when you forecast the future, you tend to add complex items to it, and effectively is what you could do is remove the complex items that we are in today, like the cameras I would remove, but the chair I would keep.
That's right.
But something else.
And the cameras are models of something that started 100 years ago.
Exactly, and they will be replaced by something else. So there's something I call Lindy law, and it maps to fragility. The longer something has been in print, the longer it will be in print.
Right.
The longer had technologies, anything non-perishable.
So things are supplemental rather than kind of revolutionary. I mean, we're not constantly
no, actually, it's even beyond that. It's like we're more into improvement of things that exist already than anything else.
Okay. Well, this leads to one of the things that I thought was most interesting about anti-fragility was your emphasis. I mean, you're teaching at you teach risk management. You're good at math, or let me put it this way: you get into a lot of arguments about math. Yet your writing style and your field of reference is very literary, is very historical.
Literary, but Roman.
And at one point you wrote that one of the things that bothers you about economics and about a lot of social sciences is there's an absence of literary culture, and that leads to a future blindness. Talk a little bit about that, because the way we're taught in the U.S. is kind of literature, the humanities are kind of bullshit, or it's like frosting you put on top of something else.
Okay, I have my view is a little different. Is I like to teach the classics, not to teach what Scott Fitzgerald ate for breakfast at a given day. You see, that to me is not literary. Not what. This is why I don't hang around literary circles.
Right. You are famously anti-artsy farts.
Exactly. Okay. So you read about it. I like the distilled wisdom of the ancients. It's a remarkable amount of wisdom that, in fact, is something anti-fragile to it, or at least robust. If you map fragility into has more downside than upside from random events, which is exactly what is concave in mathematical form or shape, is hates volatility. Once you map fragility that way, an existing item, anti-fragile means has more upside than downside. The first person to really understand the point in history was Seneca. Seneca wasn't Greek; he was Roman.
The great
he was a wealthy
philosopher,
Stoic philosopher. He
tutor to Nero.
Tutor to Nero, but he was the wealthiest man in the world in his day, supposedly, or happened to be for a while. It was random at the time, but his idea was how to get more upside than downside in life, and he realized when you have wealth that you have more downside than upside from it. You get used to it, you have habituated, and then he forced himself. This is
one of the reasons why I stay poor. Because that way I'm always on the upside.
Well, that's his idea. He forced himself to become poor. Okay, he had 500 desks to write on, but he faked like he was a shipwreck once a week, something like that. So he understood that notion of anti-fragility, and it's very strange. Scholars don't.
How did it end for Seneca?
Well, he committed suicide, but it was dignity. The whole idea is the entire idea for a Stoic is that is that you can't control randomness. You can control how you behave.
Right.
And he behaved he died the way he wanted to die, which is with honor.
Talk about, because one of the things that is, I suspect is one of the reasons why you are as kind of popular and as, which isn't quite the right word, but as dashing a figure as you are, is that in the United States, certainly, it's rare for an intellectual, particularly one who's good at math, to also have any sense of, that the Romans existed as something, something we could still learn from. You decided at an early age you were interested in becoming a philosopher. Talk about that, and then how that linked into the work that you're doing now.
Okay, well, I mean, I wanted to be a philosopher from the beginning, but then I decided, then there was civil war in Lebanon. I left, came back from France, and I went back and I realized I had too many books to read. And I loved reading, but I hated to be given books to read. See, because if you're bored with it, you lose the option. I like optionality.
Well, and you think the autodidact is
the optionality of switching to finding your own path rather than being in a straitjacket, all right, of university stuff like that. So then I realized that I had better study something more technical, all right, and then of course I continued 2 lives, one technical, all right, and one non-technical, and the technical led to option trading. All right, and the option trading led to more doctorate related to probability theory applied to options, and some problems, in off model, and some obscure stuff. So this is so my background was technical by day, literary at night. You see, with the classics aren't really Roman, but I think like a Roman.
right.
The Arabs and the Greeks think in the same way. They love theory. They respect theory. They respect ideas. They respect same things, top down.
Right.
Whereas, although the Arabs were, into systems that were bottom up, but thought-wise they respect top down, and the Romans were immensely heuristic.
Right. And I mean, it's experience versus
exactly.
empiricism versus abstraction.
It is a form of tinkering and trial and error. And then the Romans understood optionality. They understood that their constitution of the republic was made through adversity. You see, bouncing back every time, getting better, and rather than Lycurgus from top down thinking of how things should be. And in a way, they figured out what it took me a long time, to be able to put down on paper optionality, the option of changing. Not being locked into a plan. Right. They understood it.
But at the same time also using the past as a guide or as a framework.
Exactly. Same as I was talking Lindy effect is technologies. Right. What has survived has to have survived for a reason.
Right.
So it could be hidden reason. You don't understand. You don't try to rationalize.
Right. So, but you're also, but you're not slavishly devoted to replicating the past or preserving the past.
No, the idea is as follows: whatever change you're going to do needs to be incremental, and minimize adverse consequences of it. And you don't believe your ideas. You only believe what you see.
So this is really, you're very interested in the limits of knowledge rather than the perceived power of an all-encompassing universal genius.
It's exactly the opposite of someone said, what are you doing? I say, take the theory of everything. I'm doing the exact opposite. How to make decision if you don't understand everything.
Right.
So that's the idea.
Yet you do have a single kind of line of thought that runs through everything.
My line of thread is probability. Probabilities have a superb thing going for them. They add up to 1, right? So so there are mathematical things that come from that. The fact that probabilities add up to 1, that you never have the whole story. You see, and you never see 100% of things and stuff like that. There is a thread, but the way I framed it here is again, it's a probabilistic thing, but it's hard to explain, without graphs, is that whatever has more downside than upside from random events has some attributes. Right. And these attributes are shared by everything that has these attributes. Like, for example, if I take a medicine and I don't understand how it works, we don't have a lot of history, I face more downside than upside, you see, or I should act as if I face more downside than upside, because benefits are seen and small, and when you go against Mother Nature, the benefits can only be small. Right. You see, against the history of nature if you're not very ill. So all these considerations come from the same thing. Are you long an option or short an option? And in life, you make decisions where you have maximum option, right? So it's not like a theory of everything. It's a decision-making rules that are distilled, that are, to me, not as original as they appear. Right. They're not particularly original. If we are sitting now, 2,000 years ago, at Seneca's table, and he had a good table, right? He had a good table, and the next day he would force you to become poor again, but you can enjoy dinner. And we were talking nobody, people say, "What are these guys talking about?"
Right.
All right. It's so unoriginal. Tell us something we don't know. Right. So that would have been, So that's sort of like my background. Yes.
How does that fit in with? I mean, you have shown another reason why I think you have really captured a public imagination is because you speak freely and openly and hostilely towards your intellectual adversaries, and
I have a commitment. If I see fraud, don't shout fraud. I am a fraud.
Okay.
And so apply to everyone.
Well, let me run through a couple of your greatest hits because they're really good. New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, you called so vile and harmful that when you accidentally made eye contact with him, you became nauseated. Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, you talk about Stiglitz syndrome, which is what happens when public intellectuals have absolutely no responsibility for stupid and bad predictions. Nobel laureate Paul Samuelson is an intellectual fraud. Paul Krugman, I don't think in your entire corpus, you have anything good to say about them.
No, I mean, Samuelson and Krugman is a little different because I didn't say, or probably I didn't remember, in there, but I say that they have no consciousness of risk. So they propose a model, we should follow it. They don't have no idea of risk. And I think risk should come first because you're endangering the public by giving reduced models. But the idea that runs through the whole thing is, let me be technical for 2 minutes so I can relax.
Sure.
Something called Jensen's inequality, which is like when you have a convex payoff, you benefit from randomness, and when you have concave payoff, any error of your model is likely to hurt you.
Right.
Okay, and typically they have concave payoffs. Like the policies by Krugman, all these can be voiced as concave payoffs.
Right.
Nothing wrong except they don't know it.
Right.
You see, this is what I mean is missing nonlinearity of items. It's a little technical, so in the end I have a section showing how we can talk about mistakes made in economics by having concave payoffs.
What is your goal as a public figure? I mean,
I don't want to be a public figure.
Okay.
I spent 5 years after Black Swan. Well, the first 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, I walked around thinking it was nice to go to Davos, and then I didn't like it. Came back home.
Why didn't you like it?
Too many empty suits, and also. What's my profession? Is to write books.
Okay.
I only write articles. Let me tell you, I only write articles because to explain some of the idea of the books, and I do technical papers and books. Right. And everything else I do is because the publisher wants me to write op-eds. The rest I don't.
So, well then, let me put it a little bit differently. What are you hoping that your ideas, how do they add to the public understanding of how a good society would work better and what kinds of mistakes to avoid?
It has already led to beautiful results. I mean, it was David Cameron when I was contacted by him and his administration to go to help. And I told him, listen, I'm not public intellectual, but we can talk about my ideas through my books. I'm not going to write articles, and we can have a conversation. All right. It led to being demonized by sections of the British public. Who cares? And as well as here, but it had an effect. But I say. It's not bad. People can pick up these ideas very quickly. My point is to have a systematic approach to making decisions under incomplete information and under incomplete understanding of things. Right. And build a society that doesn't blow up if someone makes a mistake, which is the same thing. Right. Now, the society seems to have unique attributes, and I'm